In the next few hours, Scott Morrison will touch down in Hanoi. He'll begin the first bilateral visit by an Australian Prime Minister to the Southeast Asian nation since 1994. Others have been there, but this is a bilateral visit. Scott Morrison directly going there for a day or two to discuss economic, trade, investment relationship, but also the strategic relationship. And this is important right now because tensions between Vietnam and China have been, well, increasing dramatically and largely because of tensions and disputes over the South China Sea. Joining us live now from Hanoi, Sky News political reporter Annelise Nielsen. Annelise, this is going to be a delicate one for Scott Morrison to navigate because he won't want to upset China too much, but everyone knows that he does want a deeper strategic relationship with Vietnam.
Absolutely. We'd all be surprised if anyone said the word China over the next few days, but we know that is exactly what's in the front of their minds and certainly will come up in these bilateral conversations. The ambassador of Vietnam to Australia has already said that he expects the South China Sea will be brought up from the information that he's been given. He told that to the Financial Review. And it's because of the South China Sea, it's become an escalating issue. This has been bubbling away for quite some time since that decision in 2016 by the International Maritime Tribunal to not recognise the 9-dash line. The Chinese have been quite aggressive, and this is something that's happened in the economic zone, the exclusive economic zone from Vietnam before the Chinese have built an oil rig. But they did remove it. It's only in the last few weeks, however, that they've been spotted doing exploratory trips throughout that economic zone, hinting that they could be looking at establishing another oil rig. So that's what has the Vietnamese concerned. The pitch that we've heard they're going to be making to Scott Morrison is that Australia should be concerned about what's happening in the South China Sea because we have key trade routes that go through the same region. So it's likely that this is quite strategic between the two countries to be trying to boost their own presence in the Southeast Asian area. And it's all very relevant because we do know that Vietnam will be hosting, or chairing rather, the ASEAN Summit next year. And so that gives them quite an influential position.
Yeah, look, it is. That means Vietnam will have, you know, for the period it's leading ASEAN, that additional clout and that coordinating role for other Southeast Asian nations. I think what's going to be fascinating is whether Scott Morrison goes beyond the language he usually adopts when it comes to the South China Sea. We support freedom of navigation. We support international law. Will he go beyond that, I suppose? And will Vietnam be seeking Scott Morrison to make any firmer commitment to uphold that freedom of navigation?
That's exactly right. And it was interesting in that announcement from Scott Morrison just before he left, where he talked about the Strait of Hormuz and sending an Australian frigate there. The first sentence was saying that Australia is committed to protecting freedom of navigation. Now, the Chinese would be listening to that very closely. They're very sensitive to issues like this. There's also going to be a defence focus in one of the events that's happening here. The Prime Minister will be meeting with a number of ADF people who have trained local peacekeepers, Vietnamese peacekeepers, that have been and will again be deployed in South Sudan to help with peacekeeping efforts there. And so that's something where it's not a frontline defence issue, but it clearly shows that there's that trade of expertise and there is that defence connection that they're trying to do along the sidelines. And you can bet China will be watching very closely.
They sure will. Annelise Nielsen live from Hanoi. Thanks very much for that. We'll bring you more on the Prime Minister's arrival there when it happens.